Welcome back to the deep dive. It is Wednesday, February 18th, 2026. And if you're anything like us, you are probably still trying to process what exactly we just witnessed over the weekend.
I think process is the right word.
Yeah. I feel like I need a flowchart, like a full-on conspiracy board with red string just to explain the last 48 hours of basketball.
It was definitely
Yeah.
a lot. Spectacle feels like the right word, but I'm not even sure that does it justice. It was almost overwhelming.
Right. We're fresh off the 2026 NBA All-Star Game, or I should say the All-Star Tournament, which was held at the brand new Intuit Dome in Inglewood.
A beautiful building, by the way.
Incredible. And just to set the record straight for anyone who maybe got lost in all the chaos, the USA Stars defeated the USA Stripes in the championship game.
Which, and let's be honest about this, was maybe a little bit of an anticlimax given the build-up.
Huge anticlimax.
Everyone, I mean everyone,
Yeah.
wanted to see that USA versus World final. That was the narrative.
Exactly. We spent months, maybe the better part of a year, debating the world champion title, looking at the rosters, hyping up this clash of civilizations.
Right.
And we end up with what felt like an intra-squad scrimmage for the actual trophy. But I will say, Anthony Edwards taking home the MVP felt right.
Oh, absolutely. He was the one guy who consistently played like he actually cared, which is, half the battle in these things.
More than half the battle.
He really did bring that competitive spark, and that's the one thing the league is always, always chasing with this event.
But here's the thing that really struck me. We were watching the game, and you're seeing the new format, the three teams, the round-robin bracket, the confusing point differentials.
It was a little confusing, yeah.
And it hit me. Most people, they tune in for the dunks. They tune in to see the stars in cool shoes, to see the halftime show. But I really don't think many people actually know why we even have this game in the first place.
Or that the entire concept, this whole massive weekend, was basically born out of a huge sport-threatening scandal.
Right. Most fans just assume it's always been this way, this grand celebration of basketball greatness. But the origin story is, it's actually pretty dark.
It is. It's a story of desperation, really.
And beyond that, I don't think people appreciate why the format keeps changing every 5 minutes. I mean, think about it. We went from the classic East versus West for decades. Then all of a sudden, it's captains drafting teams on TV.
Playground style.
Then we get the Elam Ending, which was amazing. Then last year, it was teams named after the Inside the NBA crew.
Which is interesting.
And now this USA versus World Tournament bracket, it feels like the league is constantly tinkering, almost, I don't know, desperately.
They are, and that's because to really understand this event, you have to understand its DNA. It has always been an experiment. It has always been a reaction to whatever was happening in the league at that specific moment.
Ah, so every format change tells a story?
Exactly. Every rule change, every tweak to the voting, every new format tells you something important about where the NBA was at that point in its history. It's a barometer for the league.
Okay, so that's our mission today. We are going to peel back the layers of the NBA's midseason spectacle. We are not just going to recap the weekend. We are going to trace this whole beast all the way back to its desperate origins in 1951.
All the way back.
We'll walk through the evolution of the format, the good, the bad, and the very ugly. We'll unpack the weird little rules like the Riley rule or the death of the center position on the ballot. And finally, we'll look at the culture of the event itself.
And honestly, I think that journey from 1951 to what we just saw in 2026 tells you almost everything you need to know about how the NBA itself has changed. It's a perfect microcosm of the league's entire history.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning, part one. The desperate origins. You mentioned a scandal. And when you say scandal, we're not talking about a player tweeting something controversial.
No, not even close.
We're talking about something that almost killed the sport of basketball in the public eye.
We have to go back to the early 1950s. And to really get this, you have to strip away everything you know about the modern NBA. Forget the billion-dollar TV deals, forget the global icons, forget Nike contracts.
Whoa, wait, this is not the league we know today.
Not at all. The NBA was a struggling sort of regional league that was barely breaking even. But the biggest cloud hanging over the entire sport of basketball wasn't even about the pros. It was about the college game.
The point-shaving scandal.
The point-shaving scandal. And we really need to pause on just how massive this was. In 1951, college basketball was king.
Bigger than the pros.
Oh, much bigger. The center of the basketball universe was New York City and Madison Square Garden, and the kings of that universe were CCNY, the City College of New York.
This is the team that won both the NCAA and NIT tournaments in the same year, right? A historic achievement.
Exactly. They pulled off the double Grand Slam. It's the only time it's ever happened. These guys were heroes in New York. They were celebrities. And then the news broke.
The arrest.
They, along with players from several other prominent schools, were arrested for taking money from bookies and mobsters to shave points.
And shaving points, just to be clear for anyone who doesn't know, doesn't mean losing the game.
No, that's the insidious part. It means making sure your team wins, but by less than the point spread. So if the spread is 10 points, you make sure you only win by 8. It's almost impossible for a casual fan to detect.
Which makes even more damaging to public trust.
Absolutely. And this wasn't just a few bad apples. It was systemic. The fallout was nuclear. It completely shattered the public's faith in the sport.
It effectively killed the reputation of college basketball in New York for a generation.
It did.
Yeah.
And the problem for the NBA was that the public didn't really distinguish between college basketball and pro basketball.
They just saw basketball.
They just saw basketball and thought, fixed. They thought, why should I pay my hard-earned money to watch this? The outcome is probably determined by some guy in a smoke-filled back room.
So Maurice Podoloff, the NBA president at the time, is sitting in his office, and he's not just worried about ticket sales for next Tuesday's game.
He's worried about the existential legitimacy of the entire sport. He's worried the whole enterprise could just collapse.
So the NBA needed a PR win, and they needed it bad. They had to do something, anything, to regain public attention and prove that professional basketball was still a premier entertainment product, and more importantly, an honest one.
Right. They needed a good story. They needed a distraction.
So who are the brains behind this whole operation? Because usually these big ideas start in a boardroom with 20 consultants and a PowerPoint presentation.
This was much smaller, much more of a Hail Mary. You essentially had 3 key players. You had Maurice Podoloff, the president. You had a man named Haskell Cohen, who was the NBA's publicity director. And then you had Walter A. Brown, the owner of the Boston Celtics.
Okay, so the league office and a very important owner.
Right. And Haskell Cohen is really the one who gets the ball rolling. He looked over at Major League Baseball, and he saw how incredibly successful their All-Star game was.
Which had been around for a while at that point.
Since 1933. It was a huge, established midsummer classic. Cohen suggested an exhibition game featuring the league's best players. He basically said, if baseball can do it, why can't we?
And I'm guessing everyone in the room just immediately loved the idea. Because in hindsight, it seems like such a no-brainer. Put all your best guys on the floor, throw the ball up, and print money.
Not at all. That's the most fascinating part of the story. Most people, including the president, Podoloff, were incredibly skeptical. They were pessimistic. They didn't think anyone would come.
Why? What was the logic there?
Podoloff literally told him, nobody wants to see these guys play for nothing. The assumption was that without the integrity of a league standing, which, again, fans already doubted because of the scandals, the product was worthless. Why would fans pay money to watch a game that didn't count?
It's a fair question, I guess, from their perspective at the time.
Especially when you're fighting for every dollar. So the idea was dead in the water. Until Walter Brown stepped up.
The Celtics owner.
Walter Brown was the catalyst. He believed in the idea. He stepped up and said, I'll host it. He offered to hold the very first game at the Boston Garden on March 10, 1951. But then he went even further.
What'd he do?
He told the league he would personally cover all the expenses. The travel for the players, the lodging, the promotion, everything.
Wow.
And not just the expenses. He promised to cover any potential losses incurred from the game. It was a massive financial gamble on his part.
So he was basically saying, if this thing is a total disaster and we lose money, the check comes out of my pocket, not the league's.
Precisely. He was insuring the league's reputation with his own bank account. He put his own wallet on the line to prove this concept could work.
That is a true put your money where your mouth is moment. It's almost impossible to imagine an owner today doing that without a whole team of analysts guaranteeing a 10-to-1 return on investment.
It's a different world.
So, March 2, 1951, the first game happens, Boston Garden. What was the result on the court?
Well, it was a classic format right from the jump. Eastern All-Stars versus the Western All-Stars. The East won 111-94. And, fittingly, since the game was in Boston, a Celtic took home the first ever MVP award, Ed Macaulay.
A hometown hero, perfect. But the score, as you said, probably mattered a lot less than the gate receipts, right? Did people actually show up, or was Podoloff right to be skeptical?
That was the aha moment.
Yeah.
The big reveal. The attendance was 10,094.
10,000.
Now, to you and me in 2026, where we just saw the game in a dome with 18,000 people and millions watching around the world, that might sound, modest, a decent crowd.
Right, it doesn't sound world-shattering.
But you have to contextualize it.
Right.
The season average attendance for a regular season NBA game at that time was only about 3,500 people.
Okay, wait, so they almost tripled the average attendance for a single exhibition game.
Exactly. It was a massive, unqualified success. It proved that people did want to see the stars, regardless of the stakes. It completely shifted the trajectory of the league.
It validated the whole idea.
It turned a public relations crisis into a foundational tradition. Without that gamble by Walter Brown, we might not be sitting here talking about the 2026 tournament today. It proved that the spectacle of basketball had a value all its own, independent of the championship race.
It's just wild to think that all the glitz and glamour we see now, the pyrotechnics, the celebrity halftime shows, the millions and millions of dollars, it all started because a guy in Boston promised to cover the losses just to get people to trust the sport of basketball again.
It really is. And that initial success, it cemented the format for decades. For a very long time, it was simple. It was East versus West, the best from one side of the country against the best from the other.
Which brings us right into part two, the evolution of the game. Because for a long, long time, East versus West wasn't just a format. It was an identity. It was a real rivalry.
From 1951 all the way until 2017, that was the standard. And for most of that history, the East actually dominated that rivalry.
Really? That surprises me. I feel like for my entire adult life, at least, the West has been so strong. You think about the Warriors dynasty, the Lakers with Kobe and Shaq, the Duncan-era Spurs. It just feels like the West has been the power conference for so long.
That's a perfect example of recency bias at work.
Hmm.
If you look at the entire East versus West era, the East holds the all-time lead with 38 wins against just 29 losses.
Huh. Okay. So for a long time, the East really ran things. But eventually, a new problem emerged with the format. It wasn't an external scandal this time. It was the product itself on the court.
Right.
Let me guess. The defense just disappeared.
Completely. Vanished. Over time, the game became purely about flashy dunks, alley-oops, and ridiculously inflated scores. The competitive edge that existed in those early days where players actually felt conference pride and wanted to beat the other guys for bragging rights, it just eroded.
It became a layup line.
The very, very expensive layup line.
I remember those games in the mid-2010s. The final scores were getting absolutely ridiculous, like 196 to 173. It looked like a video game on rookie mode with the sliders all the way up.
Guys were literally moving out of each other's way to let people dunk. There was no resistance.
It stopped looking like a basketball game and started looking more like a glorified warm-up drill.
Precisely. And the fans started complaining. You could hear it in the discourse, see it on social media. The ratings started to dip. The prestige of being an all-star was fading because the game itself looked like a joke.
So the league had to do something.
They did. So in October 2017, they decided to blow it all up. They announced the end of the East versus West era. Starting with the 2018 game, they introduced the captains and draft era.
I have to admit, I actually loved this format. You take the top vote getter from each conference, you make them captains, and you let them pick their team's playground style right there on TV. It felt like recess.
It added this great layer of personal intrigue. Who picked whom, who got picked last. It was drama. And the key mechanic was that they could draft from the entire pool of all-stars, regardless of conference.
Which broke down all those old geographical barriers.
Totally. And that led to some really crazy roster constructions that you would never have seen under the old system.
And the most notable moment of that era has to be the very first game, 2018.
Team LeBron versus Team Steven.
Yep. Because of that draft format, Team Steven managed to draft 4 players from a single team, the Golden State Warriors.
4 players from one team. That has to be a record, right?
It tied the record, actually. It had happened a couple of times before, way back in 1962 with both the Celtics and the Lakers. But seeing 4 Warriors on the same all-star squad in the modern era really highlighted the super team dynamic we were in.
I mean, you had Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green all on the same all-star team. It was basically the Warriors starting lineup plus 1.
It was. But even with the draft, which fixed the roster problem, the end of the games could still be a bit, anticlimactic.
For sure.
If one team was up by 15 with 2 minutes left, it was still just guys running out the clock. The fourth quarter often felt like a formality.
Which leads us to maybe the single most significant innovation in recent sports history, and I don't think that's an exaggeration, the Elam Ending.
2020, the Kobe Bryant tribute. This was such a powerful moment.
It was a pivotal moment for the league.
Yeah.
Kobe had tragically passed away just a month prior to the 2020 game in Chicago. The entire basketball world was just reeling, just in mourning. And the league wanted to honor him, but they also desperately wanted to fix this fourth quarter problem. So they introduced the Elam ending.
Okay, so for those who might have forgotten how this works, because, again, we've already changed formats since then, break down the Elam ending for us, because on paper, it sounds really confusing. You're telling me you just turn off the clock?
It sounds totally counterintuitive, but it's brilliant in its simplicity. So the game clock is turned off for the entire fourth quarter. Instead of playing for a set amount of time, you are playing to a target score.
Okay.
And to honor Kobe, they set that target score by taking the leading team score after 3 quarters and adding 24 points for Kobe's number. The first team to hit that target score wins the game.
And the psychology of that is just fascinating because it forces a game-winning shot every single time. There's no other way to win. You can't just dribble out the clock.
Exactly. Think about a normal basketball game. If you're down by 10 with a minute left, what do?
You foul. You stop the clock.
You intentionally foul. You stop the game. You turn it into a free show contest. It's slow. It's boring. It's terrible TV. Or in an all-star game, if you're up by 20, you just stop trying. You let the clock bleed out. The Elam ending removes the bleed out option. You cannot win by existing. You have to win by scoring.
And the result in 2020 was electric. I remember watching that. I was on the edge of my seat. You had the best players in the world, LeBron, Giannis, Kawhi, Chris Paul, suddenly realizing, wait a minute, I can't just chill. If I don't get a stop right now, we lose.
That 2020 game is the perfect case study. It created this incredible urgency. Players were actually playing defense. They were drawing charges. We saw Kyle Lowry in an exhibition game step in and take a charge against Kawhi Leonard in a clutch moment.
A charge! In the All-Star game, I remember seeing that play and just thinking, okay, this works. That singular play proved the format worked. It reintroduced risk and consequence.
And arguments with the refs. You saw real, genuine intensity. Now, that game did end with an Anthony Davis walk-off free throw, which was a little anticlimactic as a final play.
Yeah, a little bit.
But the possessions leading up to it were some of the most competitive, compelling All-Star minutes we had seen in decades. It proved that if you change the incentives, the players will absolutely compete.
It really, really felt like they had finally cracked the code, but the NBA never sits still. No. They kept tinkering. And that brings us to the last 2 years, the era of the tournament experiments.
Right. We saw a brief and kind of unpopular return to East versus West, but then in 2025, they went completely off the board with the Inside the NBA format.
That was wild. A 4-team mini-tournament. I remember the announcement and thinking, what are they doing?
It was 24 All-Stars, plus some of the top rising stars, and they had 4 teams named after the TV analysts. Team Shaq, Team Chuck, Team Kenny, and Team Candace Parker.
I remember that. And Shaq's OGs ended up winning the whole thing.
They did. They beat Candace's rising stars and Chuck's global stars. It was fun, it's the novelty, but it felt a bit like a TV show gimmick.
It felt less like a major sporting event and more like a reality show challenge.
I think that's a perfect way to put it. What brings us to this year, the 2026 format we just witnessed here in Inglewood.
The USA versus World Tournament.
And this format really reflects the changing landscape of the league. The talent pool is so global now, so deep, that a single world team isn't just a novelty, it's a legitimate powerhouse.
So the format was 3 teams in total, 1 world team with 8 of the best international players, and then 2 separate U.S. teams, 16 American players divided into USA Stars and USA Stripes.
Very interesting setup.
We have to talk about how that final bracket played out. We went into the weekend so hyped for USA versus the world. The narrative was set. The world team has multiple MVPs, Luka, Giannis, Jokic, Wemby. The expectation was a coronation of the international game.
And mathematically, you could argue the world team was at a disadvantage from the start, 1 team against 2 USA squads. But the shock wasn't the math. It was the on-court chemistry, or lack thereof.
The bracket was a little complex. It was a round robin. Game 1 was Team A versus Team B. Game 2 was the winner of Game 1 versus Team C. And Game 3 was the loser of Game 1 versus Team C.
Right. It was a 3-game round robin to determine the 2 finalists. And looking at the results. The first game, USA Stars beat Team World in overtime. It was a thriller.
That was the game of the weekend, by far.
No question. Then USA Stripes beat USA Stars. And the final round robin game, USA Stripes beat Team World.
So both USA teams beat the world team and made the final.
Exactly. The championship game was USA Stars versus USA Stripes. And the Stars, led by Anthony Edwards, just took it to them, 47-21.
A bit of a blowout in the final, but those round-robin games were tight. It's just so interesting that with all the talk of international dominance, the final ended up being an all-American affair.
Well, again, the USA had two teams, so the odds were slightly in their favor, but I think it also shows the depth of U.S. talent is still absolutely incredible. That USA Stars squad, the Anthony Edwards team, they played with a chip on their shoulder we haven't seen in years.
It really felt like a direct response to all the world champion discourse from the last Olympics and World Cup.
I think it was. By the time they got to that All-American final, the statement had been made. But it does bring us to this weird place. We now have a tournament format that is clearly trying to manufacture the intensity of the playoffs, because the old exhibition model is officially dead.
And that's the real key takeaway from all these format changes, isn't it? The league realized that the word exhibition implies meaningless.
Exactly. But tournament implies stakes. Even if the prize money isn't life-changing for these guys, the format itself, with a bracket and a final, forces a winner and a loser in a much more direct and compelling way.
Okay, let's unpack how these guys actually get there in the first place. Because you can have all the fancy formats you want, but if you don't pick the right players, it doesn't matter one bit. This brings us to part 3, the mechanics of selection.
Right. And the voting process is something the NBA takes very, very seriously, and it has evolved significantly over the years. It used to be a popularity contest, pure and simple.
It used to just be the fans stuffing ballot boxes at the arena, right?
Yeah. For a very long time, yes. But that led to some questionable results. So in 2017, they changed the weighting. Now, the fan vote accounts for 50%. The player vote accounts for 25%. And the media vote accounts for the final 25%.
That player vote is always so interesting to look at when the results come out. You can really see some of the petty rivalries come out in the voting.
Oh, you do?
You see guys leaving their sworn enemies off the ballot entirely, or voting for their own teammates who, clearly don't deserve it.
You do see that. But it also balances out the pure popularity contest aspect of the fan vote. You remember those years where a guy like Zaza Pachulia almost became a starter just because of a coordinated internet campaign from his home country?
I do. It was a running joke for a while.
The current weighting system prevents those kinds of anomalies from actually taking a roster spot from a more deserving star. The players and media act as a check and balance.
And speaking of the fan vote, the accessibility has changed so much.
Hugely. Since 2003, the official ballots have been offered in English, Spanish, and Chinese. That was a massive step in acknowledging the league's global fan base, particularly in China, with Yao Ming's rise.
The sheer volume of votes coming from overseas now must be staggering.
It is. It has a real impact on who the starters are.
Now, one of the biggest changes in who gets voted for has been the treatment of positions. I remember growing up, you had to pick a center. It was a required field on the ballot.
The death of the center, as it's often called. Prior to 2013, the ballot was very strict. 2 forwards, 2 guards, and 1 center. But the game itself was changing.
Small ball.
Teams started playing small ball. The traditional back-to-the-basket center, the Patrick Ewing or Shaq type, was fading away. More teams were using versatile, shooting big men.
So they changed the ballot to reflect that.
In 2013, they eliminated the center designation entirely. Fans started voting for 3 generic front-court players. It didn't matter if there were 3 small forwards or 3 power forwards.
And in 2026, what was the rule for this year's game?
For the first time ever, it was completely positionless. The voting for this year's game, you just picked your best players. If you thought the 5 best players in the conference were all point guards, so be it. You could vote for them.
That is a huge, huge shift, and it really does mirror how the actual game is played now. You have 7-footers like Wemby bringing the ball up the court and shooting step-back threes. The distinction between a guard and a center is blurrier than it has ever been.
Exactly. The ballot is just finally catching up to the reality of the sport.
But what about the coaches? Because at the end of the day, someone has to manage all these egos. Someone has to tell Luka to sub out for a minute.
The coaching selection is generally pretty simple. The head coaches of the teams with the best record in each conference get to lead the All-Stars. But there's a very specific and interesting rule attached to it called the Riley Rule.
I love this rule. It sounds like the title of a 1980s action movie, The Riley Rule.
It's named, as you might guess, after Pat Riley, the legendary Lakers coach. In the 1980s, the Showtime Lakers were so utterly dominant that Riley earned the right to coach the Western Conference team 8 times in 9 seasons, between 1982 in 1990.
Wait, 8 times in 9 years? That's absurd dominance. He was basically the permanent all-star coach for a decade.
Yes, and the league and probably some of the other coaches basically said, okay, this is getting a little boring. We need to give some other guys a chance. So they instituted the rule.
Which is?
A coach cannot be selected in 2 consecutive years. If your team has the best record again the next year, the honor automatically goes to the coach of the team with the second best record.
I love that. It's basically the Pat Riley was too good for his own good rule. It forces variety.
It does. It also spreads the burden because, frankly, not every coach wants to spend their only midseason break babysitting a bunch of superstars in a different city.
That's a good point. So we have the starters who are voted in, we have the coaches selected by the Riley rule, how are the reserves picked, the rest of the team.
The head coaches from around the league pick the reserves, but, and this is a very key detail, they cannot vote for their own players.
So that prevents any obvious bias. You can't just pick your own 6th man to try and get him a contract bonus.
Correct. Each coach selects 2 guards, 3 front court players, and 2 wild cards players of any position. This part of the process is where the real debates and snubs happen.
Right. This is where you see the coach's favorite kind of players maybe get rewarded, the defensive grinders, the high IQ guys who don't put up flashy numbers but coaches love.
Exactly. They get rewarded over the flashy scorers who don't play a lick of defense.
And what happens when someone gets hurt? Because it feels like that happens every single year. We always have the injury replacement drama.
The commissioner, Adam Silver, currently is the one who selects the injury replacement. However, there's an important nuance here. If a starter is injured, the commissioner picks the new player to be added to the roster, but the coach of the team is the one who decides which of his existing players moves into the starting lineup.
Got it. So the commissioner doesn't get to name a starter.
Correct. The coach still has control over the rotation and the starting 5. You don't want the commissioner's office meddling in on-court lineup decisions. It makes perfect sense.
Okay, so we've covered the history, the evolution of the format, and the nitty-gritty of the selection process. But the All-Star Game is so much more than just the basketball game itself. It's a cultural event. It's a massive party. It's where the league flexes its muscle. Let's talk part 4, spectacle and society.
And the venues themselves play a huge role in the vibe of the entire weekend. We just mentioned the Intuit Dome in Inglewood hosting 2026. This is actually a really significant moment because it's the first time the Clippers have hosted the event individually.
Right. They used to have to co-host with the Lakers at Staples Center, Crypto.com Arena, whatever we're calling it this week.
Exactly. So this was a massive moment for the Clippers' identity as a franchise. Steve Ballmer built that arena specifically to get out of the Lakers' very long shadow, and hosting the All-Star Game there is the ultimate "we have arrived" statement for them.
But if we're talking about venues and just pure scale, we have to talk about the 2010 game.
Oh yeah, Cowboy Stadium.
In Arlington, Texas. Everything is bigger in Texas, and this was proof.
The NBA decided to go as big as they possibly could. They held the game in a massive football stadium. And the attendance record they set that night is, I think, very likely to stand for a very, very long time.
How many people were there?
108,713 attendees.
That's just mind-boggling for a basketball game. I can't even picture it. You usually play in front of, what, 20,000 people, tops?
It completely shattered the previous basketball attendance record, which was around 78,000 for a college game. It turned the game into this gladiator arena spectacle. Now, let's be honest, the sightlines for watching a basketball game were probably terrible for most people.
You must have needed binoculars from the top deck.
Oh, for sure. But the energy, the scale of it, unmatched. It showed that the NBA could command a Super Bowl-level audience for its premier event.
But the choice of city isn't always just about who has the biggest, newest arena. Sometimes it gets political.
It does. And the most prominent example of this was the entire saga of the 2017 All-Star Game. It was originally awarded to the city of Charlotte, North Carolina.
I remember this very clearly. This is the HB2 controversy.
Right. And this is a really crucial moment in the league's modern social history. The state of North Carolina passed a law called House Bill 2, which became widely known as the Bathroom Bill.
Right.
It limited legal protections for LGBTQ individuals and specifically targeted transgender persons regarding which public bathrooms they could use. It became a national cultural flashpoint.
And the NBA took a very hard stance. They didn't just issue a vague press release and move on.
Not at all.
Yeah.
They viewed the bill as discriminatory and completely incompatible with the league's stated values of inclusion and diversity. Adam Silver publicly warned the state government that they would move the game if the bill wasn't repealed.
And North Carolina didn't repeal it in time.
They didn't, so the NBA pulled the trigger. They took the game away from Charlotte.
They moved it to New Orleans.
Yes. And we have to really understand the magnitude of that decision. The All-Star Game brings in, conservatively, around $100 million in economic impact to a host city. Moving it was a massive economic blow to Charlotte and a very clear, very loud message from the league.
And eventually the bill was partially repealed and the game did go back.
Yes, it was. After a partial repeal of the bill, the game did return to Charlotte in 2019. But that whole sequence of events showed that the All-Star Game is a powerful piece of leverage. It's not just a game, it's an economic engine that cities fight over, and the NBA proved it was willing to weaponize that engine to support its values.
It's so fascinating how a game that was invented to distract from a gambling scandal, a game born out of a desperate need for good PR, eventually became a tool for social and political leverage.
It really highlights the league's evolution in social responsibility. It shows the confidence of the modern NBA. In 1951, they were practically begging for attention and legitimacy. In 2017, they were dictating terms to state governments.
Incredible. Before we wrap this all up, we have to touch on some of the fun oddities and trivia. Because when you throw this much talent together for a weekend, weird little things are bound to happen.
Oh yeah, always. One of my favorite statistical quirks is the position swaps we used to see. We talked about how the ballot is positionless now, but even before that, fans would just vote for the best players regardless of position.
Right.
In 2007, for example, Kobe Bryant and Tracy McGrady were both voted in as starters in the West. Both are quintessential shooting guards.
Naturally. Two of the best scorers of that generation.
But you can't have two shooting guards start. Someone had to play point guard. So Kobe, being Kobe, just started the game at the 1. It just shows that when you have that much talent, the traditional positions kind of go out the window. You just put the 5 best guys out there and tell them to figure it out.
And what about the uniforms? I feel like the All-Star uniforms are always a huge topic of debate every single year.
Always. Traditionally, it was simple. The West wore red and the East wore blue. It was clean, it was classic. But there was this wonderfully chaotic period from 1997 to 2002 where the players wore their own team uniforms.
Oh, I remember that. It looked like a bag of Skittles just spilled out onto the court. You had the Bulls red next to the Celtics green, next to the Lakers gold, next to the bright teal of the Hornets.
It was visual mess. It kind of hurt your eyes to watch. But some fans absolutely loved it because you could instantly identify which teams the players represented. It was a celebration of the individual franchises. Now, of course, we have special, newly designed jerseys every year.
Which is obviously a huge merchandising play. They need to sell those jerseys to the fans.
Exactly. It's all about the revenue.
And I heard that sometimes players have to switch their jersey numbers for the game.
Yes. The best example is Patrick Ewing. He was famously number 33 for the New York Knicks his entire career. But one year, Larry Bird was also on the Eastern Conference team. Bird, of course, was also number 33.
So who got the number?
Ewing, either out of respect or maybe because Bird had seniority and, 3 MVP trophies, switched his number to 3 for the game.
That's a deep cut. I love that. It shows the unspoken hierarchy that exists even among the superstars. Even a Hall of Famer like Patrick Ewing has to bow to Larry Legend.
And we can't forget the halftime shows. They really became a thing in the year 2000. That was the first real big-budget halftime concert.
Okay, who is the lineup? I'm curious to see how well it's aged.
They're ready for this. It was Kenny Wayne Shepherd, Mary J. Blige, 98 Degrees, Montel Jordan, Martina McBride, and LL Cool J.
That is the most year 2000 musical lineup I have ever heard in my entire life. You have a blues guitarist, R&B, a boy band, a country star, and a rapper. It's a perfect time capsule.
It really captures the era. It was this attempt to appeal to every single demographic all at once.
So let's zoom all the way out. We have gone from the 1951 Boston Garden with 10,000 people and a nervous league president, all the way to the 2026 Intuit Dome, with a 3-team global tournament, massive political leverage, worldwide TV audiences, and Anthony Edwards holding the MVP trophy.
It has been quite a journey, a 75-year evolution.
If we look at the big picture here, what is the single biggest takeaway from this whole history?
I think the biggest takeaway is that the All-Star Game is, and always has been, the NBA's laboratory. It started as a desperate experiment to save the league's reputation. It evolved to showcase the East versus West rivalry. When that got stale and uncompetitive, they experimented with drafts and the Elam Ending to try and fix the competition level.
And now with the tournament format,
they're experimenting with how to package the game for a modern, global, short attention span audience. It's a living, breathing thing that adapts to whatever the NBA needs it to be at that specific moment in time.
And it adapts to the players, too. The move to positionless voting, the move to officially include a world team, it's all a reflection of the reality that basketball isn't just an American game anymore, and it's not played in rigid positional boxes anymore.
Exactly. It's a perfect mirror of the sport's evolution.
Well, this year we saw the USA Stars win the title. The Americans came out on top. But I do want to leave our listeners with one final thought. We just saw a USA versus world format where the USA had 2 teams and the world had 1.
The math, you could say, favored the home team.
For sure. But look at the talent pipeline. Look
Yeah.
at the best young players in the league. Wemby, Luka, Giannis, Jokic, Shai. The list just goes on and on. We are in the middle of a global explosion of elite basketball talent.
There's no doubt about that.
So my question is this. Are we approaching an era where the world team becomes the dominant dynasty in this event? Are we going to see a future, maybe in the next 5 or 10 years, where the USA has to play the role of the underdog in their own league's all-star game?
That is a very, very real possibility. And you know what? If the world team starts winning consistently, that might just be the next great rivalry that saves the game all over again.
How so?
Imagine an all-star game where Team USA is genuinely desperate to win, not for a bonus check, but for national pride, to prove they still own the sport they invented.
I would watch that. That sounds like real competition. A massive thank you to everyone for listening. This has been the deep dive into the evolution of the All-Star Game. We will catch you on the next one.
Thanks for listening, everyone.